Well, welcome to the program right now from National Review. Our friend, the Billy Idol of National Review, perhaps. Not the gunfather of National Review, although he could be both. Charles Cooke. How are you, Charles?
I'm a bit too young to be... Well, I was going to say I'm a bit too young to be the gunfather, but I think I'm probably a bit too young to be Billy Idol as well.
I think, well, not in his heyday, perhaps, but yes. I suppose you're right about that. I could call you the... I don't know any of the members of One Direction. Perhaps you're a bit too old.
I think there is a Charlie in there, isn't there? Charlie, or is it Harry?
There might even be a Cameron in there, because I think every now and then I get strange tweets to Cameron Dallas, who is some boy band member. I don't know. No, Cameron's
Dallas
shaking his head.
Sound very English.
Who's Cameron Dallas, Cameron?
I don't know.
Listen, I don't know why I know this, but since I'm the king of useless knowledge, Cameron Dallas is what is something in 2015 is known as a Vine superstar. There's apparently this new sub-industry where I guess people become Vine famous, and he's become Vine famous, and he actually just got his own movie. So screw writing, screw broadcasting.
Wow.
Just do Vines, and you could be the next superstar.
All right. Well, there you go, Charles. Apparently we're in the wrong business. We just need to be on Vine more.
Well, I actually do have a Vine account. I've just never used it. So I've obviously missed out on great success.
You could be on your way to Hollywood right now.
I'll name myself something like Charlie Houston, just to annoy this person.
There you go. Charlie Waco, I think would be
that would
be good.
Provocative.
Or even if you could do it, Charlie Nacogdoches. I don't know if that might be the spelling. You know, it might be kind of hard to get followers with that. But
yeah, exactly.
All right, listen, you've got a piece at National Review right now talking about the New York Times, which has acknowledged, unlike a lot of media, they've actually acknowledged the fact that our violent crime rate in this country has been dropping precipitously for the past 20 years. We are a far safer society than we were back in the 1990s. But they say, Charlie, that nobody knows why. It's a great mystery as to why this has happened.
Well, yes, and I agree with them in that I don't know why it's happened either. There are a number of competing explanations, and as the Washington Post said, talking about the Times story, of course everybody projects onto this fact their own pet project. And so the police say, well, it's because we've been better at policing, and the criminal justice system says, well, it's because we've been better at running a criminal justice system. I think that this is underplayed in the piece, but the economy has clearly had an effect. The massive growth and improvements in the standard of living since 1991 have had an effect. I don't know what effect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying, I should be clear, that I know that there is a hard and fast link, a causal link, between the increase in firearms and the liberalization of the firearms laws over the last 20, 25 years. But, and the piece doesn't mention this in the New York Times, and nor does the Washington Post write-up, it is an indisputable fact that at the very moment that the crime rate, and this goes for the gun crime rate too, and there was a report, I think in 2013, that showed that the gun crime rate had been cut in half in 20 years. At the very moment that this has happened, you have seen a considerable increase in the number of firearms in circulation, an increase in the number of shooters, the liberalization of the laws governing firearms, and the introduction in every single state in the union of concealed carry. So what we can say is twofold. Firstly, that all of those horror stories that we heard, if you introduce concealed carry, people will be shooting each other in the streets, in supermarkets. It will turn America into the OK Corral. All of those were wrong. And those who promulgated them should be ashamed of themselves. And secondly, we can say that the notion that beyond the number zero, there is a hard and fast link between an increase in the number of guns and the increase in violent crime and in gun crime is false. It is a false notion. It is much, much more complicated than that. In fact, we can say in absolute terms that this idea is false because if you look at the graphs, as America has added more guns to, I will accept, an already large stash. As it has added more guns, violent crime and gun crime have gone down, which tells us that it is not always the case that if you increase the number of guns, gun crime will increase.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is, as you say, you can't prove that the increase in concealed carry holders, and again, go back 20 years, I don't want to say a negligible number, but maybe a couple of million to now estimated over 11 million. You can't say how much of an effect that has had, if any, on the drop in violent crime. But the foundational dogmatic premise of the gun control movement is that more guns leads to more crime. Inevitably, that the more guns, more crime. And that has not happened in this country over the past 20 years. Even in the last few years, when you've had this huge spike in gun sales, gun crime continues to drop.
Correct. Now, what we can say is that there is, of course, more gun crime in the United States than there is in countries that have no guns at all. That's obvious. There's a huge cache of firearms here. The problem is, unless you are arguing that you want to get rid of every single gun in the country, that's impossible. But just suppose that we live in a fairy tale and you could click your fingers and get rid of every gun in the country. Unless you are arguing that, the question becomes, how do you deal with the world as it is? Now, given where we start from, which is a country with a lot of guns, it seems to me that the question of how to reduce crime and the abuse of firearms is extraordinarily complex, and that complexity is never given any time by the anti-gun side. And a great example of this is Vermont. Now, Vermont is obviously connected both to other states within the Union and also to Canada. It's not as if Vermont is an island in the middle of nowhere. Vermont is also, by some counts, the most heavily armed state in the Union. 70 to 75% of households have a firearm. Vermont also has basically no laws governing firearms. There's a constitutional provision that was interpreted in the 1930s to prohibit all laws at the state level. So Vermont is only subject to federal laws. And Vermont has almost no crime. Vermont has almost no murders. I think there were 2 murders last year. Mm-hmm. It ranges between 2 and 8, depending on the year. And often the murders that occur are not committed with firearms. Now, that doesn't prove that if everyone had a gun or if you had no laws, then you would have no murders. But what it does show is that there is no hard and fast link between the number of guns and the nature of the laws and gun crime. That is a complexity. Another complexity is that suicides, which constitute by far and away the majority of the gun deaths in the United States, are much higher in countries that don't have as many guns. They're also lower in countries that don't have as many guns. They're lower in Britain, but they're higher in France. They're higher in Cuba. They're twice as high in Japan, which I think has the strictest gun control laws in the world. This is a complex issue. America is a complex country. And when we're looking at this massive decline in crime, it is not unreasonable to ask what role guns played, and it's certainly reasonable and necessary to point out that the predicted crime spree didn't happen.
Talking with Charles Cooke from National Review. Listen, Charles, before we let you go, I've got to ask you as well about Oxford University Press and this bizarre story that apparently in children's books, no mention of pigs or pork products because we don't want to offend anybody.
That's pathetic. It's caving in to the worst people in our society and foreign societies. I think the most popular, certainly the most profitable children's character in Britain is Peppa Pig. At what point is that going to become too offensive to people to remain the favorite of children? It's almost a joke, this story, but sadly it's not.
No, it really does look like something you'd find in The Onion, not Oxford. But
also, I think it's remarkable in that they're not saying, and this would be Craven as well, but they're not saying do not publish offensive material. Do not criticize religion in children's books, for example.
Right.
They're saying don't mention sausages, don't mention pork products, don't mention anything that could be connected with pork. That's pathetic. Why not outlaw the mention of wood or shoes or grass?
Or pasta. You know, we don't want the pastafarians to get upset, right?
Or those Italians.
The great spaghetti monster, you know, they could be offended by depictions of linguine. So we better, you know what, maybe we just better stop writing books, Charles. Maybe that would just be the safest thing to do, right? Just quit expressing ourselves entirely.
Right, because either you attract the ire of people who want to kill you, or you are committing microaggressions. It's all very silly. It's all inimical to the principles of classical liberalism and of ordered liberty that we've become used to.
All right, listen, that music means we're almost out of time. I hope we see you down here soon. We'll go shooting again. We'll drink some bourbon.
Absolutely.
We'll do a podcast. Charles Cooke from National Review join us here on NRA News, Cam and Company.